Did they text you? You know we don't get it.
I'll sit down again.
Has anyone got the doc?
Yeah, I'm good actually.
Okay, is anyone not ready? Okay, sounds good.
Farmers used using an all-time low government support doesn't help the news and is a long-term solution to Farm 820. Even before COVID, farmers negative income 22 farmers compared to 50% net drop on income prices by government payments to account for 36% of net farm income. You say forecast mean net farm lose money from the farm. I see years just made about the farmers have been skewed by years of low income did not benefit the federal payments. The next year, farmers struggle to make loan payments trying to push farm at risk of liquidation. Farmers can't see you're good. They face economic uncertainty. This means to survival of their farm. After keeping increase in incentives, farm increase wages, living conditions, house farm makes part of violations. Third pay agricultural labor increase. Workers able to collect a bargain. Workers made $8 per hour compared to commercial labor $10. The two professionals not able to use it. That's why agricultural laborers engaging collective bargaining to negotiate for higher wage agricultural labor subject to harsh conditions. Not for the clean drinking water question. Unions can help with this again. Actually, by bargaining, unions help employer all unions hold employer liable such and allow members for always maintain the bargaining position for over persistent. Become like stronger entities. Allies lead teams from like versus productivity, wage increases, loose consumer spending, economic guide. J 120. So to show giving pay rates to low wage workers, raising the wage increase water productivity. Customers are willing to pay more money. Quality increases. Very company increase price while losing its sales conversion. Getting better performance, so higher rates and not lead to reduced market value. It's pretty able to better employees work harder. They care about holding their jobs in place because more building one rates higher accurate, more skilled. Just people think only perishable healthcare which 18. It's a ruin wages ruin agriculture, lecture which gets it productive work on variable wage increase and improving the quality of all positive interplay between productivity enhancing market developments and becoming developments productivities and impact wages was compared to institutional facts when you don't increase earnings company gains on labor productivity. That drives economic confidence, increase productivity, drives forward growth, which takes a chain of investment money. 19. As a variety of survey adjustments when using performance investment adjustment behavior reflected by economic business hazard yields on income and performance investment can support and policies economic condition while cost innovation readiness and shortage of labor force can simple by increase in capital input. Second is capital investment uses wages increase incentive for investment. 16. Productivity is productivity which provide incentives for farmers to invest in capital when diversity bases level incentive investment can be higher. Another way cheap and higher wages reduce capital relative to labor make investments raise productivity higher wages boost productivity automation just another way of saying just another way of saying productivity goes could afford policies that raise wages because they could raise their productivity wage raising policies make it easier for workers to market. 2 scenarios extension versus food shortages supports massive deforestation and habits that kills biodiversity. 10 and also industrial revolution really increasing in activities in the farmers by 2,035% use of their ability to if you didn't increase in population stimulation is in turn what happens in farmland change clearing the forest results in improved ecological carbon greenhouse gas emission 30% all feasible things. Biodiversity loss causes extinction. 16. Biodiversity loss contributing factor behind climate change causal issues bidirectional the best surround real exceptionally rapid loss of biodiversity including extinction as not really consequence of proving extent beyond obvious rising factor signs of unable to fully into the ecosystems of regular rubber version much more when they reduce typically on planetary scale transiting to the global ecosystem where the causes of what results would be right social and economic stability and loss of life form could be expected from climate change yet equally disrupted from threat multiply that will expect very complex biodiversity loss consequences and access to that. Second, U.S. agriculture collapse and food insecurity triggers great powers multiple hotspots catalogs 17. U.S. faces threats such as ISIS war with North Korea right now competition with Russian China where reliable food supplies and stable prices as produce stable countries food insecurity drives migration generating conflict disrupting relations a strong agricultural sector as environment for stability emerging markets produces 20% of U.S. ag exports and so they go through the tyranny shooting whereas extinction group 19. Although there may appear no linkage between Indian food with war basis or fertile anywhere, stress nothing can be rewarded. Nuclear conflict makes it distinct possible. Depending on the religion that display atomic weapons of invasion by refugees and famine on nuclear wars, possible outcome food crisis, security driver, great conditions, use of nuclear plan. Plan adjusting to recognize the uncoded route of agricultural workers strike 16. Spec enters out the building meet them by the church and lobby rally. 11. And all engaged workers should really bargaining part of the to law and workers release all agricultural labor and agricultural defined as manufactured for by farmer on farm agricultural needs to protect is industrial workers need the most particularly because subject to abuse, poverty, housing, working conditions, extended deficit implies legally agricultural laborers and they have already with all their employed by like and all of the units of learn and agricultural workers that the other is usual. The standards maximum is expected will be when it's been all ages packing this must have something go out also working more to see already so conception about this question rate gender class knowledge and saber development on observational based on the ethics and just making these back body happens because interpret each active when active specificity when aggregation every policy benefits on horizontal also means that I can change reaction between documentation this means choosing to in this cycle of coverage cycle side not so is the mission sequence cycle orders intentions is false inherently active action actor specifically converses then into the different ethics only consequential consequential is because many things are by breaking property for lunch that's not as bad as breaking property they get actors on hospital by value the consequences of reason and respond. The second word is much shorter. The first 4 minutes, the first on A includes the possibility kind of more about gain for values on anything we're not like future generations means anything active we have must look for visualize all fiber reductionism and very spirit part before matrix are getting by fiber surgery cover these fibers affect the two substances appears conscious revealed by psychologists and then questions history items of their visual fin receive definition 6.1 10 4 10 with 4 state consequences and becomes part of our television with intrinsic attractions into that happen. Second one is that how can I spell even deeper that details are not possible between the one is under period 9 possible details all behind everyone on the west coast of library it's possible to rely it's a lot from the firming on you. One point is more there, even applicants all doesn't make it engaging the abuse making the debate impossible to reject debate. One is to show for 3 subjects about navigation and to reject by sequence no everything 6 interfaces or shorting me the two are possible being committing interpretation one interest aren't by directional they should have to defend our notes that more time T equal no 2 and 3 one time should reach that sending for the 2 or F1 against a big percentage of the warning and one seeing cheap there's more reason devoting large fraction of time only to understand when both legislature cheap and vendors parents because it's basic and there's rules of that education distinguished for supposed for life like works is thinking 2 money is that the rule of us if I made the type of hypothetical consequences of the planet prefer intuition policy makers only from the opponent policy based on whether the text of the policy logically decided the real implication of the past policy. If you want to clash reading the truth, I think incentivizes reading a bunch of the operates equals substantive education compared to what was solved by because it forces substantive education policy in KBA sequence includes robotics, economics, and later from the activity because they would just auto listen strict every time. I'll send this after. True testing makes up rules that are constrained to search about raising some of the stats when just following O-ring Scott 15. The like is proves that concerns job the job account rally. Eventually too long track recruit these performance rules about it just devices money and influences such as these and about devices the way that make debate home and rounding argumentation that creating rules of engaging debate should not be purged just by proposals was affirmed and naked are insufficient to produce universal was absurd to observe plans to increase these their arguments that claims the countries that is including several types of media reviews agency does not follow reasons to tell the truth of the resolution yeah I just got yeah, I'll just send the last card.
Yeah, let me know when you send it.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll mark it. I resent the app with the marked card at the bottom.
Alright. Good for curls.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, what does this last part say? Like the one you just read?
There's the truth I think stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, so there are a few arguments as why truth is wrong. One of them is like this major edition, just like it makes that like it's just like unites like constitutional environment that it makes just like constitutionalism just straight up not something that matters. Also just because like we have to prove like just because we have a resolution doesn't necessarily mean we have to like prove it exactly true. Which is like this not like what debate is. It's about like competing worlds and yeah.
Okay, it's fine. What does it look like to evaluate the desirability of like the hypothetical consequence of the plan?
I mean, it's just like comparative worlds. Like, if the consequences that the F produces are good, then vote F. If not, then vote negative.
Okay, what constitutes a calcondite?
Calcondites are things that say it's impossible to calculate under util, or it's impossible to like calculate consequences.
Okay, what is the word in parfit?
Parfit? Yeah. The brain can be severed into 2 different spheres of consciousness.
Yeah. But what does that, or why does that imply like
Like, why does it justify util?
Yeah.
Because it means that there's no such thing as personal identity, which means the only thing you can do is aggregate.
Okay, it's fine. The degrees of wrongness argument. Why do we care about like degrees of wrongness?
Because like there's an intuitive difference between me like stealing a pencil from someone and then like shooting them.
Okay, what does the introspection argument say?
Yeah, the phenomenal introspection argument.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the argument basically says by introspecting on one's experience, we can assume that pleasure is the same thing as goodness. For example, whenever I eat ice cream, I can identify that I'm simultaneously having a pleasurable experience and simultaneously having a good experience, which means that pleasurable is something that is synonymous with goodness, which is about the max method.
Okay, that's fine. For the are agricultural workers now?
Yeah.
They are. Okay.
Yeah, they're not given the right to strike.
Okay, that's fine actually. Explain the second scenario.
Which scenario?
It's labeled like second scenario for extinction.
The Great Power War stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the Council Law 17 contextualizes this as a strong agricultural sector as something that is necessary for stability, because companies are highly reliant on food supplies, and something like food security would increase the chances for conflict, which means it would trigger things like Great Power Wars as countries fight over like things like food.
Okay, it's fine. Yeah, I'll send one in. Breathing case.
Any particular order on this?
Framing. Framing and review. There's a kind of big overview on the framing. You can throw that on a separate sheet if you want.
Is it framing proper first or
framing proper first, then.
sign first when you're switching?
Yeah. Let me know whenever it gets off. Yeah, let me check it. So framing, starting with like overview, then we'll line by line, then we'll do done review.
Give me like 2 seconds.
Okay.
So it was 3.
I'm good.
I'm good.
Oh, okay, cool.
The role of altitude and Norse major best performed building methodologically embrace the lack of Rudy 10. The transition signification is wounding with lack of state of brings an existence and creature desire. The subject is a faltering creature that introduces apprehensive state of want and endeavors to cover from any simulation. The subject experiences lack of the ability to see souls as fantasy, a lot of mass and or reality, the lack of cause desire that the subject leaves will return to wholeness. So it awaits psychic energies like any subject find meaning by accepting life's precondition of existence and prefer a recognition and embrace structure like the base point like that need of liquid change the first leaf everything is controlled like even the flow of communication always be co-opted see most readable you can embrace lack more and less of binary so it's more simple result so one of can embrace more and the one AC is an endorsement of never ending quest for knowledge or striving towards the material and calculable intemperable from an unconscious paranoia that eats at the subject life belongs to us for meaning is for not we sacrifice their nature and knowledge while disintegrating our psyche intention grasping at any value to life melts knowledge and dialect lower relation of fear the whole possibility negation and suffering saturate our beings what if paranoid is what's in releasing the opposition alien to the self that others hurt with knowledge and we hurt knowing we are pacified yet coward in the extreme trembling over the way we may and may not know knowledge it threatens our psychic integrity there are things we desire to know nothing about psychoanalytic attitude place unconscious negation in the foreground of human knowledge and the affirm utopian reimagining murder without explicit access to overcome the structural reality suppression and dominating political demand and empty rhetoric and symbology that reduces subject to an object of our own sadistic enjoyment Lumberg radical anti-globalism protest take up the political possibility the democratic demand issues attention to the rhetorical production of enjoyment and therefore oversees the political potential both of the democratic demand and public resistance symbolically constitute practice of address and investment imply determinate political consequences shortcoming of demand that operates in isolation for practices of enjoyment in imaginary relations and address under radical demands and the alternative traverse of fantasy bars internalizes our order to deck them as distinct partly through 7 lives plus fantasy feature of human subject we save it's never any desire for wholeness. Make out 13. Fantasy idea that's all on symbolic orders. Fantasy indicates real by promising to close the gap between real and reality by repressing the discursive nature of reality. Expression of fantasy high source subject is a signifier and makes it difficult for us to experience subjection. The illusions of fantasy keeps subjects concerned with a ruling symbolic structure. Fantasy makes evident link between loss and enjoyment, allowing us to conceive politics and embrace loss rather than having a haven and show. Interpretation workers is a generic term for the app may not defend a just government recognizing where a specific group of workers unconditional rights strike and evil. Generic can be affirmed by particular institutes in college fields, upper intelligence, have for existential variables, colleges are not considered SAT does not entail that more generic statement of the educational institutions do not hear the SAT, the college fields adverb test quantification test for existential variables, dogs are barking outside of my window express an existential truth that just in case there must be some dogs barking inserting any adverb of qualification cannot add meaning and it applies to workers upper intelligence as the government ought to recognize unconditional right of workers. The strike doesn't entail the government ought to recognize people's unconditional rights. The strike just because it doesn't prove that all people should drag in violation. They expect agricultural worker standards. One person to counter justifies them doctrinally doing away with random words in the resolution with tax negative grounded reparation because the app is no longer bound to the resolution independent of jurisdiction. The judge doesn't have a jurisdiction to vote after there wasn't legitimate app to limits and ground there. Model allows the app to pick anything from teachers, doctors, and police. There's no universal sense and everyone has a different function, political implication. It explodes apparently to a random worker of the week after which makes cutting stable like links impossible limits to heat arrest reciprocal engagement because they make a case liver neck prep and it takes out ground like this is certain occupations where some of the few generics when the app expects obligation 3 TVA self you could have read your plan as an advantage under whole red advocacy fairness is a voter debates connecting and workers who come out who veteran rush to education voter only schools have been a big drop of video church to teacher abuse no RBIs you shouldn't want to proving your affairs illogical semantic straight all your arguments because you presume there'll be a lot of value to logically competing in terms of reasonability is arbitrary no right for what is reasonable which implies judge convention which takes which always takes around the advantage's hand and interpreting the affirmative off the change the word of the resolution violation you're changing what the definition of workers by including new workers topical before the app plan is enacted agricultural people are not considered workers only the through fiat as come with the topical extending the definition of employee to include agricultural laborers under the NRLA they are not workers that's literally your solvency card that proves the violation means that your sort of cross-ex on this question was just wrong one is it makes it burden makes it impossible to value topicality because the judge has to value whether or not the app falls within the resolution before they voted since the app only becomes topical through the act of the other inevitable to resolve an operating burden before voting which makes it debate irresolvable when it comes to few limits you justify infinite number of affirmatives so you can redefine anything as topical which makes it pre-round prep impossible which destroys fairness and education. For example, you're not justified redefining any job or humans or social status as workers and saying they should be allowed to strike and getting unique offense off that massively advantage of making it impossible to engage. Bring. Psychoanalysis hijinks use one pain and pleasure or signifiers that we describe meaning to it is possible to describe something as pain or pleasure will be no one to one relation to be signifiers to signify to not guiding UK hijinks using pleasures multiple views are motivated by our own desires which can actually reflect other subjects for criticizing against large scale threats is an attempt to fill in lack and they link to K we can never be satisfied what we have which links to our criticism unfulfilled desire for their framework driving utopian ideal which recreates an infinite death driver subjugating us in desires which A disempowering and B cause psychological violence embracing the lack is embracing the lack resolves its drive towards extinction as there wouldn't be a strive towards fulfillment that causes suffering. Find leader to use calculates to seek out more weapons for the fundamental insecurity, i.e. the lack of which justifies new threat scenario instead of using the same ethical system that leads to drafting to we should use our methodology to break out that cycle. 7 aggregation is a possible subjectivity means you can't compare out individuals to feel pleasure. 8 is justifying utilitarianism is independent voter. A util justifies Chelsea justifies the life of harm some for the benefit of others, even they do not quantify the argument does others is still instances where some get great benefit or other harm to you can justify intrinsic arguments we never know our action was good until we validate state of versus action say they produce sense based on the outcome of the action probability is solved. It's solely a question of usage allows for moral error and freeze action wasn't being calculated per decision say justifies that the absence of pleasure is not bad no like calculates lost value and experience is absent but the lack of pain is actually good even if that cannot be enjoyed by everyone because we still have value that they read more later talking arguments social alternatives are off the bait ensure the base case means safe to all Johnson profit obligation to ensure inaccess from practice don't proliferate accessibility voting all have arguments presupposed people feel states and states to respond and lie by. The actrospect argument when it's all policy just because some states you feel doesn't make it right to enjoy empirically is proven governments with self-interest, which is why they keep things like nuclear power 3 is them taking action doesn't prove ethical forward mass violence is proves to be their actions the same mass amount of pain. Say all the extinction first argument one uniqueness any action is infinitely small chance causing extinction which means they freeze action which slows with leaves of violence checks and always be clinical and exponential to the tiny where we self-extinction means it has equal weight which isolates all of our impacts we need to presume after its high drive fly may cause a hurricane but it has an equal chance for 2 and 3 is if we win their framework leads to calc drives to extinction then we turn cover those cards are not useful just justifications, just extinction, no impact to explain the degrees of wrongness unless consequentialism is true. But we're running that's not true through the Lemberg evidence. The part of evidence that is just wrong. One, it's unwarranted experience never occurred. We should never adopt a theory based on it, knowing without knowing the result. Two is one side of the brain could die and the other one could fully be me. The one of your theories. So for check one of three, you don't want either. You can put minor right next, and your response and understand your arguments auto adjust the intervenes. Use two error answers to an argument of intervention. Always takes around Vader's hand. Two speech on there. Well, I want to take structurally for your answer. Respond to I can't do it. Either C and for the B Spencer wrong. A and the conscious half does make sense. You one is C theory and I'll play with the other one off case. Skip to the G point one and C theory comes first. One lexicality of the negative abusive is reactant. The after means justified. Two is norming. We have more speech to know whether it's a good idea since Charles read or earlier, which always a constituent purpose of theory debating a B sequencing prerequisite actualizing any other voter like parents education theories introduced versus less power for all the reasons why one or theory is skewed toward the app should be validated as a reason why one and C theory comes first. Five is otherwise to justify the app baiting theory and uplearning and allows them to get away with infant abuse. Didn't read 6 or negative abuse justifies app abuse and cut the reject one or theory stuff. It was I read C and then skipped the G.
Do you mind just sending a marked doc?
Yeah, for sure.
The final five wafers, yeah.
Should be sent.
You said it's sent?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll wait to get it. Can you make sure you sent it?
Yeah, it says sent.
Did you say reply all right?
It says all of your emails are in there.
Okay. If it doesn't come in the next 30 seconds, we'll start.
Did the judges get it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's might be something you don't know.
Okay, I'll give it like 10 seconds.
Try pressing refresh or something.
Well, I don't know what the problem is. You could,
You can just ask me about the changes if you want.
or it'll probably come something. Are you good for CX?
Yep.
Okay, starting now, what is the lack?
Yeah, it's an unfulfilled desire. So, example, or do you want me to go through like the whole thing, or is that enough?
No, I just want to know like what the lack is.
Yeah, it's a desire we can never fulfill.
Why is it?
Like why
Is it
can't?
like good or bad?
No, it's definitely bad.
Okay, why is it like bad?
Or wait, no. Okay, sorry. The lack is we don't take a stance on whether the lack is good or bad. It's a question of what we should do with the lack. So instead of constantly filling in the lack, i.e., what the links say you do, you should embrace the lack, i.e., what the rule ballot says you should do.
Why is embracing the lack good?
Yeah, so it separates the affirmative from their sort of demands, i.e., the affirmative is constantly doing things like taking actions, i.e., policy actions, that are trying to fill in the lack and trying to do things that end up causing psychological violence because they don't work, because all of those sort of actions are in name of mastering the lack.
I guess so, like, what's the implication to the K? Like, what's like the terminal impact of your K?
Right. Yeah, so we say that attempts to fill in the lack cause infinite psychological violence insofar as so there's a couple words. Insofar as A, we can't, which is some sort of like cruel optimism claim, I guess, and then B, if we do end up reaching our endpoint, it destroys us because there wouldn't be any meaning to that endpoint, i.e., if I get like super rich, then I'm empty because I like lost my wife because I got rich or something like that.
Okay, can you explain the first lane to the K?
Sure. Which one is that? The Mills one?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Let me scroll to it. Okay, yeah. So that says that utilitarianism, like that search for knowledge, I guess, is what is damaging to the self because it's contradictory to internal desires / like we're sort of denying intrinsic, like denying things. Which, in other words, like we have a desire to know, or no, we have a desire not to know because that which we know less is external is paranoid.
Wait, on a huge strap like that?
Yeah, it's just your desires / striving towards knowledge is bad. It's an attempt to fill in the lack.
Okay, why is filling in the lack bad again?
Yeah, that's the impact. It causes infinite psychological violence, which was like A, this like cruel optimism argument, and B means that we never are able to fulfill it, and we're constantly striving to do things that never work.
Okay, can you explain like the theory show? Like what is
Which
it?
one?
Like the third one?
Are you asking for like the violation?
Yeah, like
Yeah. So specifically, the violation is your like this definition of employee, I guess, to include agricultural laborers under the NRLA. We're saying that they aren't workers, which is literally what your solvency card says. Your solvency card says they aren't workers now, and the plan makes them
the
workers.
solvency card says that they're not defended, like they don't have the right to strike. What does it say they're not workers?
Here, I'll have to pull the line to be honest, but let's see. Yeah, it says that they need, or like workers need protections, etc., and the definition of employee needs to be extended to include them under the NRLA. They aren't included right now. It needs to be extended to do that. That is what the app is supposed to do. Like I can read you the line from the card.
Alright, that's fine. We're using 5 or 4.
Forward, done.
Alright, I'll start. What's the 3-point on like the util stuff?
Like the securitizing is an attempt to fill the lack.
Okay. Can you explain the 7-point for ag impossible?
Yeah, we can't compare how individuals feel pleasure. We can never know how someone feels pleasure. So like, there's certain people who experience pleasure differently.
And the C-point on the independent voter stuff?
Yeah, so util says that an absence of, under util, an absence of pleasure and pain would uniquely be better than just the absence of, than have a possibility of pain, which means death is uniquely better under util than life, i.e., when you're dead under util, you're just like equal. You don't have pleasure, you don't have pain. But when you're alive, you have the possibility of pain, which means it's uniquely worse to be alive.
The 3-point on extinction first.
Oh yeah. If we win your framework leads to Calvin guide that cause extinction, then we turn your Palmer evidence. It's not util justifications. It's just extinction justifications. You have to win that like util is the reason why things extinction happen.
I use 339. T case. Yeah, T case, the critique, and then theory.
What's the order of the case?
Case, like the advantage quickly, and then the grammar stuff.
Sorry, can you order one more time?
Yeah, T case, the critique, theory.
Alright.
There is a dog.
What shell are you doing first?
Topicality.
Okay, thanks.
Hey, it's
I got it. I'm good.
I got it, I'm just telling you, but I'm good.
Is everyone not ready? Okay, cool.
Counter Hopkins specifies subset workers have the privilege to exhibit L10, regardless of their exhibit regardless of each review. Is this with this estimate because it's going to revolve how the person actually carries on the manner related to the realizes as long as for some period that the present sense of vision exhibit shows is what based on the original link is again to we alter the rest last week in the this with irregular interprets of paragraph check like fashion this well understanding of vision the particular interest of the vision by more important to question knowledge capacity is because that's paragraph is like one is that portion of the vision but different types of work condition that is right for education back the big tech works like workers and knowing vision that was not for but more than something to do is text and dimensionalize all things each work is the takes me to be more sometimes because they have their second instance against the that's never respect that's why the first one is communicating lots of getting third time after 3 minutes term of this is the way worse they takes and asking to lean to go for few about this thing that they are willing to wonder like by so the next 4 minutes one function is used to allow because every few works not going to about I'm not going to get enough time this stuff that although people send the office drivers really working like overtime is on case actually the jurisdiction argument doesn't matter because people vote on TSO okay. Except the first scenario, I figure an exact proposal limits directed trying to get these partly to these increase ways to make more work as the firms. They go major agricultural class, which causes great power because of things like food and security. You can see the case or shooting that case. If there was something on the firm is like saying that actually the firm is like saying that extinction always only the only possibility of morality, the only possibility of something like morality exists by having ever be alive. The first is machine that utilitarian or which means the utilitarian something utilitarian something that they like so previous they say there's no linking. It's obviously you can see the case where that doesn't matter. They say there's a higher response you literally can see the answers that there's a 100% really we're just gonna there are 3 points the firm calculate I'll get to that on the critique on their stuff they say on the 1 point obviously we know that normatively obviously we know pain and pleasure normatively good normally we know pain and pleasure normatively good because they're very simple my hand on hot stove obviously that's usually that say the 2 point balances desires are fundamentally pain and pleasure I'll get to that when you're getting the securitization argument doesn't make sense of course you can see the case there's not securitization that for me stuff they say utopia idea but obviously it's not utopia recognizes that they're immaterial that we have to rectify material conditions that they're just using utilities to create more obviously you can see the case of those bad aggregation pulse and stuff can compare obviously we have little chemicals that dopamine in the brain which we say we can get rid of the input versus the atrocity or all atrocity obviously all pain is bad what changes that we feel something like so we definitely would be about that people say that can't just have a runoff obviously there's a lot of pain that's something that doesn't drink water which means that is good enough to util despite death obviously all death is something that's bad it's something that's bad on the that doesn't matter the drop debate argument doesn't make sense so drop debate doesn't mean I'm going to read util regardless the critique Framing interpretation rule about survival, the hypothetical concept when they actually allow to the case ignorance parents arbitrary families that want to see different parts of the things about life forcing one research also the kind of the concept of life that makes no sense. Separate some range and actually people's concept is not about the concept of what we do, rather the positive theaters as a specific positive competition is no one of what corresponds to an art. So we in our analogy this turns to no matter your political war, critical things skills is necessary for evolutionary charge. This difference is the term gets the world about into where knowledge you care about world about is good is because you presume that they could have made the arguments for that zone arbitrary, which means the world about is medication on the world about the case definitely always part takes successful and this of close any possibility of political change. Michelle put his name into first round. That would be horrible. What it is in whether the rest of the science all painful reference or racing disease, and I say even the ones that they should not get to make decisions we're going through with that. They find right in the world the states continue to increase the states capable of doing good things supporting the abolition sites and this is someone which we only offer the state is intrinsic by asking what these things should be instrumented to rather than something to say that says it's intrinsic all domination. They say we're never ending quest for knowledge. Obviously the quest for knowledge ends at the one which means there is a way which means we definitely know. They say we reimagine America but don't overcome professional office even in that field, which means that if you have something there's one thing I fundamentally get insofar as reimagining the extinction is that there are permutation, but there's no reason why our methodology is traversing the fantasy. Three. I mean, your interpretation of agricultural laborers or if you didn't actually be delighted in line once they for other art. They do labor, which means they exchange the labor for stuff, which means just because the MLB doesn't defend it, work it doesn't. The counter interpretation will defend the lie. The counter interpretation will defend the lie. There's the first is clash. We are talking about one class is something that's really good. The first argument is obviously you can still read how they cut because I'm still defending this work. The Lewis argument doesn't make any sense because you can't change because I can't change the definition because you're already in the winner for the one you see.
Cool points. What was the warrant for fiat good against Lundberg?
Was it something C?
Yeah.
Wait, which argument was this in context?
The one answering Lundberg.
The second link?
Yeah.
Like why is fiat good?
What was the argument against the second link?
The argument is that we are imagining a good scenario through fiat, which means that fiat means that there's a constraint on like what we're reimagining. And fiat means that like we overcome oppression because fiat.
Perfect. first the K, so we'll do a quick overview on theory, the K, and then case. Everyone good?
So theory, case the framing.
Yeah, the framing.
Okay, you mean like
I'm ready.
Isaac 3.
Yeah.
You good?
starting with theory and then
Yeah.
I'm good.
Overview, we're conceding the counter trip on the second shell and the I mean. That means that you don't meet the violation insofar as you do defend the resolution, which means that the counter interpretation is uniquely true and you don't meet it, which is a new interpretation of the negative. The counter trip is now true, which means you vote neg on the counter trip, the K. Desires constituted by an ontological act. We become subjects to our entrance into social order, which alienates us from fulfilling our desires. Because there's always a difference between what we say we want and what we actually want, which creates a never-ending strive for wholeness. This is called the death trap. Desire to repeat loss due to our inability to get everything we want. I.e., we always ask for 5 more minutes and we think it'll fulfill us, but it never actually does. Which this configuration desire seeks an impossible wholeness, permits endless amounts of violence in the name of mastering lack, causes serial policy failure. Because actually getting what we want would put an end to the subjects within the social order. We're going for the Lundberg evidence. Extend the gentle fantasy link. That's the Lundberg evidence. Affirmative model. A Fiona demands where we ask the question what ought to happen rather than what we can make happen, creates a psychic split between the subject's inability to fulfill that demand. The affirmative inability to come to terms with the psychic split makes it be incredibly painful and dooms it to a state of repetition compulsion, where we return to the moment of nos, i.e., our inability to act, because we believe eventually the symbolic satisfaction of this process will be able to provide us the wholeness we are lacking. The impact is a toxic homeostasis where we're constantly re-perpetuating the affirmative impact, and it becomes a rhetorical trope we require more of, so we can keep reading that act to get balance and recognition from the judge as their master. This turns the affirmative, because it means your impacts are dissented to an act ballot and turns me into a world where we see things like Trump's election as not affecting real, we see things like Trump's election what aren't affecting real people, but rather as a uniqueness for our impact scenario. The second argument is the link of the Mills evidence that also says that the search for knowledge is damaging self, because it's contradictory to the internal negation, denial, and intrinsic to subjects. In other words, we have a desire not to know because what we know, that which we know is external, which is paranoid. The alternative is to traverse the fantasy. This requires internalizing desire only in order to attack the master signifier. Only through accepting lack is the instant feature of the human subject can we see if there's never-ending strive for wholeness. You can see a couple of reasons why this is uniquely good. One, it controls the internally to every form of thought and knowledge, because every policy, action, or chain of reasoning inevitably exists within this lack, which frames our existence. To it addresses the fundamental project of life itself. Everything we do is a search for meaning, which means our orientation towards meaning creation must be correct in order for us to create a coherent obligation, thought, or action. Insofar as we're sort of winning these two arguments, you can just vote neg on K here. They have not won. That extinction in and of itself is an embrace of the lack / stopping extinction is an embrace of the lack, which means arguments as to why sort of the flow is co-opted by lack, i.e. that your language has that the flow has been co-opted, means you can't evaluate things like extinction first insofar as they have conceded that that argument is controlled by this sort of critique. Also, the Lundberg evidence just takes out most of their stuff. The calculus we do under util is that it is psychologically violent, because we can never be 100% certain about our predictions, and B, we are attached to that position, which is the pressure of extinction. A search for knowledge is damaging to this line. You say wait, wrong foot. Okay. You say with any attempt to fill the lack causes infinite psychological violence, which outweighs extinction. One, values like always life in itself, because there's no point of living with infinite psychological violence. I.e., if I were in a constant state of psychological violence, there's no point in stopping extinction insofar as we all fundamentally have violence going on in our head in the first place, which means K outweighs your extinction claims. Use an extinction defense. Like, there's no impact to extinction if I win. Like, B is a death drive, something that culminates extinction in the first place. 3, extinction is new link. Any extinction focus act to be bad, means the will to mastery, because you always want to be on top, i.e. you always want to sort of stop things like extinction in the first stage. New link is will to mastery, though way case arguments are really bad. One, testing this at evidence indicts the true value of the app, so you can't test them in the first place. Crossfly this to your mood 6 minutes argument insofar as it's the only way we can test it in the first place, which means not moving 6 minutes, it's answering the app. 2 is root cause. World is structured by the lack, so the lack is the root cause of the 1AC, so weighing it doesn't make you win insofar as the lack is the root cause of the 1AC. Well, even if you think that they get to weigh case, it does not matter insofar as lack is the root cause of the 1AC. They say, or the Mills evidence, they say crossfly for knowledge ends at the 1AC, but that's what they all say. That's literally what they're going to say. They say quest for knowledge ends at the 1AC, but the Mills evidence proves that they're searching for knowledge, i.e. that they want to stop extinction. The Lumberg evidence, you say we imagine a good scenario, which means fiat is a constraint on what they're imagining, but you literally just explained the link to us. You explain how you imagine a good scenario and how you do the link in the first place. That is just a new link to the Lumberg evidence. The permutation do both. One doesn't make sense insofar as we're winning links. Links are dissets of permutation because you can't do the alternative / embrace the lack insofar as you are filling in the lack. You can't embrace the lack and fill the lack in at the same time. That doesn't make sense. Your point is that the permutation doesn't make sense. Your only warrant for the permutation is that the method isn't consistent with the alternative, but it isn't, or the method, there's no reason the method can't be consistent with the alternative, but we've given you / isolated links that prove that is sort of untrue. Also, permutations just don't make sense in the context of a psychoanalysis case when there are links. One, the case page. We're going for the Benatar evidence. We're going for the Benatar evidence. This was massively mishandled. Extend Benatar. Util just by death good. Under util lack of pain is good because there's an idea that there's a worse world than this, which shows that status quo is good. Lack of pleasure is neutral, not good or bad. Because just because bad things could be better does not mean the quo is better. When living, there are two possibilities that life can go. Either there's more pain than pleasure, or there's more pleasure than pain, which means life can be good or bad. Death, on the other hand, is always good under util. When you're dead, you have a lack of pain and a lack of pleasure, which means death always has more good than bad. Because, like I've said before, lacking pain and lacking pleasure is neutral, which means util justifies death being better than life because death is always good, while util has a chance of being bad. There are one implication to this. It's drop the debater because you justify death good, which is morally repugnant. You should, as you would justify things like killing or allowing racists to kill certain groups of people. That links back to the accessibility argument. No one wants to come inside of a toxic space. Your only answer to this argument is that your only answer to this argument. Wait, where was it? On all pain is bad conflicts a pre-post via distinction. On all pain is bad, or no. You say all death is bad, but no. Conceded warrants prove this is untrue, i.e. all death is bad is not true under util. Insofar as we're saying death is uniquely better under util because there's a lack of pleasure and a lack of pain, which is neutral, which is better than possibility of pain. And there's just no warrant. You kind of just flipped it. Throw it in the K or the util K.
Let me find my preference. Okay, 5:34 seconds. I'll start.
What was the one for serial policy?
Like the Lumberg evidence?
Yeah.
Yeah, the argument is that your model, fiat demands, where you ask the question of what ought to happen rather than what we can make happen, creates a split between the subject and its ability to fulfill its intent. The affirmative inability to come to term with this split makes debate painful and dooms debate to psychographication compulsion, where we return to this initial moment of loss, i.e. the lack, i.e. our inability to act, because we believe eventually the symbolic satisfaction of this process will be able to provide us the whole we are lacking, the wholeness we are lacking, which turns case because your impact sort of is re-perpetuated through debate, i.e. we keep reading this app to get ballots and recognition from the judge, which turns the app because it means your impacts are dissets the app ballot because you call it the impact app.
Alright, case. Is anyone not ready?
Is it case fit?
Huh?
Case fit?
Yeah.
I'm good.
Is anyone not ready? You good?
Sorry.
Consider the case they have the agricultural labors, the right to strike wage movement, out of the increase of wages, make workers more good at their goods, make agricultural conjugate power through things like food security on the frame. Extend that extinction ways at the market question all their offense the parts of the leaders so they can so they can solve problems of the like which means by being like the first is they can say that extinction is something that you can always undergrade on the frame against the parts they consider the defense to all the response between the extinction is that definitely the highest rate or the extent of the bench are. Obviously death is still something that's fundamentally the process of you something bad. Even if you justify that the only reason that this argument out there, the only reason this argument makes sense is just everybody's just lights were just flipped off like instantaneously. That's something not the process of extinction would definitely be super painful, which means the process of death is still something fundamental. Which is something that something that definitely produces a lot of pain. You can see that drop the beta doesn't actually do anything for us here. Which means this is just one round. Which means not going to change it. So we're going to only drop the argument. Makes sense. Even so,
Yeah. On the case.
Insofar as they rate fairness of voter both shares, that means that it comes on the highest layer, which means the prior question of evaluating all the arguments. Insofar as the only reason you can assume that the arguments are something actually fundamentally against something that are fundamentally against is by presuming that you can evaluate the arguments fairly to begin, which means that fairness is the highest layer around it. Highest layer, which means I don't even have to answer that theory of power for fairness to be something that's true, which means the power question all the arguments. You consider that it means the entirety of the one is the so you consider that it means the entirety of the one is insofar as outlining the framework that the one means insofar as I cannot make case that means that it's fundamentally unfair. Give that any index of fairness as white fairness as something bad specifically, which means that insofar as they consider fairness is better, so that means that fairness is something fundamentally good, even if they prove that debate is something fundamentally bad. And one that fairness claims is something that good, something that good. The fiat is something that fiat is definitely something that is fair, which takes out other offenses against why against why fiat is something that's bad, because it's a power question that theory of power insofar as if I didn't have fiat, that would definitely be fundamentally unfair, because I would just never be able to do anything, which means the negative would just straight up always win. Debate is definitively good. The debate is definitively good. The part of the fact that you engage in debate means that there's the fact that you engage in debate means that there's no reason debate is bad, which means that the answers all the serial policy failure just straight up doesn't make this serial policy failure just straight up doesn't make sense, because it's a question of extinction. The only reason that the subject would become to an end is everybody, which means that which means it's a for a case already that turns the affirmation or turns the affirmation predicated on theory of power. You can see that fairness is a prior question. You can figure that the fairness is a prior question means all I have to do is win the way. All I have to do is win the way case or all I have to do is win the way case or you can on the obvious extinction stuff. It's a value of life. Obviously, there's a risk that value. There is obviously a risk as living is something that's fundamentally good. You cannot say that death is something that's really intrinsic. That is just straight up repugnant of the extinction. The extinction that doesn't matter. That's obviously you consider the extinction as something that does matter on the further page, which means it definitely doesn't matter. The extinction stuff as a feeling doesn't matter, because I'm not going for that. That's testing data. Obviously you can't. Obviously you consider that fairness is something. Fairness is something that precludes the testing data, which means even if the testing data is true, it just doesn't. They say root cause. Obviously they can say root cause, but even if the debate is structure or doing the like, that doesn't mean you control the internal debate. Insofar as extinction is going to happen, always in time, because there's absolutely one unique reasons why the app is happening now. Extinction is a prior question. They can see fairness is something that matters.
Good debate.
Good.
Hmm?
Did you record that?
I hope so.